Andrew, I believe we've appointed a new manager. What can you tell us about him?
So we've appointed Adrian Pennock today, formerly of Forest Green and most recently with Gillingham. You, Sid and I met him down at Ebbsfleet last Saturday, and we're just very excited to have him on board. I think when you look at the credentials of what he did at this level with Forest Green, taking them from sort of a position where we are now and getting up into, nearly winning the league a couple of times, it's very impressive. Not only that, but building what they had with the backroom staff and things is his experience there is something we desperately need. And then, in my opinion, the work that he did at Gillingham is a credit to him in taking a team that probably had a lower League Two budget and managing to keep them in League One for an extra season. So I think he's learned a lot from that experience, and will come to us being a better manager and could be one of the best managers in this league.
I believe he's watched us a couple of times already.
He has. He was at Ebbsfleet and at Chester as well, and came away pretty impressed with the talent that we have here. And doesn't think wholesale changes are needed. He thinks there's a lot of fitness questions that need to be asked, some organization and shape that needs to be instilled, and discipline in the team on the field. But thinks this could certainly be a team that turns their fortunes around quite quickly with a bit of leadership.
Do we know anything about potential backroom staff at this stage?
He has a few candidates in mind. He hasn't spoken to me about names or anything like that. He's sort of looking at a fitness coach, looking at assistant coach, looking at another sort of old head to come alongside potentially. So he's given them the weekend to sort of decide if they want to be part of what we're trying to do here. And hopefully by Wednesday, Thursday next week, we're looking at a full team on board.
He obviously is based with his family down in Kent. Will he relocate to nearer training?
Yeah, so one of the first things we're going to do next week is find accommodation for the management team near the training ground. I'm not sure where yet, but we'll look at something so they can be based there, nearly all the time. His wife is a very understanding woman. He's led us to believe, and his personality and attitude is when he takes a project on, he wants to give 110% to that project. So they're going to hunker down and be living together in some 3 or 4 bedroom flats in and around the training ground. So.
And does he see any more involvement with the town of Barrow?
He does. He's made a couple comments to the newspaper and the radio today about how important it is to get sort of the fans involved and make this stadium a sort of difficult place for teams to come and play. And part of that is using what we have in terms of the pitch and the facilities to engage the local community, particularly sort of schools and hospitals and things like that. So he in particular is pretty keen on sort of Wednesdays, off days, coming up to Barrow and being available for those sorts of things as well. So it's key to his plan to grow this club overall.
I think we all accept that there's been a disconnect between the town and the club as one of the few disadvantages of where the training base is.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately it's, we had to make the move to Lancaster and then Rochdale to sort of make ourselves more available to the best talent at this level. But that doesn't excuse them from being in a part of the community and sort of, getting to know the supporters, getting to know the town, and being a bit more bought into Barrow as a community. So, we'll over the next few years, hopefully, we'll see more transition to where we can go back and forth, but obviously being full-time, you can ask the players to be more available and to, most of them only live an hour and a half away, so it's not asking too much for them to drive up and like next weekend, maybe train up here next Friday.
I don't think it's any secret that you or any of us consider that this club is not in a position off the field yet to be a Football League club, which I think is pretty similar to when he joined Forest Green.
No, I think it's very similar, and to me, that's one of the most sort of interesting aspects of his credentials. We all looked at what Forest Green became over the past sort of 2 or 3 seasons, and obviously getting promoted to the Football League this season. And, despite their size, they were competing with the big boys on a regular level, and that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of club that we can become, and I think that's why he's so eager to get started and get on board, because in some ways this town can do more than Forest Green's area can in terms of, commerce and talent and those sorts of things. So, we're going to work very quickly over the next sort of 7-8 months to put the building blocks in place to make sure we're competing from the same starting point as sort of the Wrexhams, the Tranmeres, and obviously the former League Two clubs, so that in the next couple seasons we can get hopefully to League Two and feel like we belong there.
How impressed was he with the facilities here when he came today?
He was very impressed. I think we sort of underestimate it because of, we see it every day, and, it's not as shiny and new as some other grounds, but I mean, obviously the pitch is top notch, and, very impressed with what Gareth has done, walking around, being in the crossbar, seeing the change room, things like that. It's a positive, it's a pro. So, the building blocks are here. I mean, he hasn't walked in and said, you know what, that needs to change, that needs to change. It's all, wow, I didn't think it was going to be as good as this, which is good to hear.
Just looking at broader club things, there's obviously a hole in the roof at the stand at the moment due to the gales last week. When are we likely to see that fixed?
Hopefully before the Macclesfield game. Scaffolding will probably go up Tuesday, Wednesday next week. And then it's just a matter of getting the new sheets in and installing them. So I've been told by the roofing contractor that they expect that to be done by Macclesfield.
And that will be 2 weeks tomorrow, when the new manager will have had a couple of weeks with his new players.
Yeah, and I expect we'll see a pretty interesting match that Saturday in 2 weeks. I'm not discounting tomorrow. I think tomorrow will be very interesting to see what kind of early signs there are of him sort of bringing a different sort of motivational tactic to the team. But with 2 full weeks, fortunately, to discipline, train, fitness, all of those sorts of things, maybe bring in a player or two with the sort of a different mindset to just kind of galvanize the team and prepare them for the battle ahead. It'll be interesting to see what they look like.
We've sold Alex Ray-Harvey to Guiseley. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Alex put in a transfer request 2 weeks ago. Guiseley had made a bid for him before that that didn't quite meet our valuation for him. So when he put the transfer request in, we accepted it and basically told him and his agent what we thought a fair value for him was. And Guiseley, more or less met that valuation. So, we are where we are, and, when you're in the, bottom half of the table in the relegation area, you need people who want to be here and want to fight and want to scrap, and this is no knock on Alex, but if he didn't want to be here, then that's fair enough. Obviously, he had a very good season last year under Coxey, and I completely understand why he wanted to go back to that system. So we wish him the best, and we'll take the money and reinvest it in players that Adrian thinks fits his system.
And Liam Hughes has also put in a request, I believe.
Liam Hughes has put in a request as well. He's obviously not gone anywhere yet, and I don't think I've seen any offers or interest in him yet. But similar sort of situation. We'll talk to Liam over the weekend and just kind of assess where he's at. Adrian will obviously talk to him as well and see if he has any changes of heart there. But same sort of thing. If he feels like it's best for his family to go challenge himself somewhere new, then we're not going to stand in the way of that.
Are we likely to see new additions, you think, before the Macclesfield game?
I believe so. Yeah, we talked about a few sort of positions that he'd be looking at based on his sort of his observations from Ebbsfleet and Chester. In terms of probably depending on where Musa and Dan Jones are in their rehabilitation, maybe defense, maybe obviously looking at a midfield player to replace Alex, and then looking at sort of maybe bringing in a different type of attacking presence to just be a bit more dynamic on that side of the ball as well. So, as he said, it's not super necessary, but he's got a couple people in mind that more from a mindset and a veteran leadership perspective that he might try to bring in.
And your dad, the chairman, is he happy with the appointment?
He is. I think he's very happy. He's, you know, it's been a very interesting couple months, really. You know, from the start of the season, and obviously the sort of well-discussed reservations about Paul Cox and his desire to remain here, leading ultimately to his resignation. And then obviously with Mickey and the injuries and Neil Hornby and the FA Cup defeat. So it's just been a very sort of tumultuous sort of 60, 90 days. And so this kind of, he gets the feeling that this is right. It's a good fit. It's a veteran guy who's going to bring stability and bring sort of an even keel to things that can hopefully move us in the right direction, get us a few points, and then, you know, hopefully start to reorganize come, you know, end of November, December, and on into January.
He probably joins us at the lowest the club's been for 2 or 3 years, really. So hopefully it can only go up.
Yes, I think this is someone was saying this is the first time we've been in the relegation drop zone since we've taken over the club. So it's a new challenge for us. It's something to learn from, and you know, it just requires a different mindset. Everyone's your friend, and everything is easy when you're winning, when you're chasing promotion, when you're going to the third round of the FA Cup, and you know, you see pretty quickly about who's on board and who's not when things start to go south or get difficult. And so it's just about, you know, asking tough questions to everyone, supporters, staff, players, you know, in terms of, you know, who wants to be here. But I think ultimately, and I know my father feels the same way, you have to go through adversity, you have to go through challenges to reach the mountaintop sometimes. And so this could be the experience that toughens us all up so that, you know, who knows what happens 4 or 5 months down the line.
I know your dad likes to learn from experiences rather than use the word mistakes. Looking back over the last 6 to 9 months, do we do things differently going forward? Is there anything that you regret or your dad regrets that maybe, or just lessons we need to learn from?
I think his big, you know, he questions sometimes. The big question is obviously when Hartlepool made the approach about Paul Cox, he kind of questions himself on whether or not he should have just let him go there, if that was the better decision. I'm not so sure, just because I think when you look at the timing of the whole thing, I think we've ended up with the right guy at the right time. Adrian Pennock was not available when Paul Cox resigned. Adrian Pennock wasn't around when Hartlepool came. So, you know, you can always ask those questions, and he does, you know, could I have done this differently? But I think overall, if you look at the timeline, it's easy to say there are mistakes, but I think it's worked out well in the end in terms of we have an excellent manager with a good team that I think will take this club higher than it's been before.
Are you planning on a meet the manager night in the near future for the fans to?
Yeah, so we'll get through the next 4 to 5 days, really, get through tomorrow's game. Adrian will spend sort of the first Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday meeting the players, finalizing his backroom staff. But hopefully we'll, you know, either, you know, in and around the Macclesfield game, we'll do some sort of meet the managers Q&A with hopefully Adrian and sort of the new key members of his staff, to just sort of, so people can get to know him, ask questions, and sort of see his personality, because I think that's the best thing about him is we've had a couple conversations with him, and he's very easygoing, very open, very sort of likable, and he just has good ideas about what this football club can achieve.
So you've been at the club, I think, something like 14 months now. Are you happy that with the direction and the club's going in the right way, both on and off the field?
Yes, I think I am. I think if you'd asked me that question 2 weeks ago, I would have been a bit more doubtful about it. But I really do think that, you know, I'll put the blame on myself as much as anyone else, but I think Tuesday was a real low point, and and hopefully the bottom of this season and really my 14 months here. You know, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next week. But if the things that Adrian is talking about doing come, you know, if even half of those come to fruition, I think we'll be looking at a team going into Macclesfield that we'll all be very, 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 very excited about. And that not only can sort of get us out of the relegation zone, but, you know, look at really charging up the table through, you know, through Christmas and into January.